What's up, everybody? You're listening to the Built for Anything audio experience. And on this episode, we're going to talk about Colin Kaepernick, Marshawn Lynch, what's going on in Virginia, and the media. Yep, I got to bring them back up again. Stay tuned. Enjoy the episode. Let's go. Wow. Where do I start? If you haven't listened to my last podcast where I talk about the media and how you need to be able to separate the narrative from the story, from the actual news, I feel like I got to bring it up again because let's talk about Colin Kaepernick. Now, I've been on my phone, on Twitter, on Instagram, and a lot of celebrities, people have memes and are making a lot of comparisons to what's going on in Virginia and Colin Kaepernick with his stance. Now, for those of you who aren't aware of what's going on in Virginia, you have a group of students who are protesting that they want to unite the right. And then you have another group of protesters who are basically white supremacists, aka neo-Nazis. And so there was a bit of a clash. One person passed away. I believe she was hit by a car. Among fights and people arrested. And I'm looking at it because I saw it happening last night before I went to sleep. And I said to myself, this is going to be interesting to see how people are covering this the next morning. And lo and behold, you have President Trump came out and people didn't like the comments that he made. They felt like he took too long to make comments. And I looked at the situation, and for me personally, I say, what do you expect? You know, you got people who are saying this is 2017. We should know better. What kind of world we're in? Listen, yeah, it's 2017. But the only difference is that they've exchanged the white garment for suits. Racism is here, people. It's not going anywhere. It's just not. Okay, so rather than trying to change that, I think we better off just leaving those people with their own ideals, and we focus on us, and we focus on spreading the right messages to our kids, our communities, and we try to live in a society where we can help each other. Because you got to understand that those people who are marching, those white supremacists, they have a thought process that precedes them. You know, hate is truly learned. I believe that. And, you know, I bring it up even when I talk about veganism, and I say that the habits that we have, we're learned behavior. It's the same thing with hate. It's a learned behavior. And I agree that if you can learn one thing, then you can learn the other. You know, that means it can be reversed. Only if you want it to happen. If you don't want it to happen, if you're not willing to, then nothing's going to happen. You can't force, I'm not going to say you can't force change, but change is better when it is accepted by the person who is changing. Okay, because we get forced to do a lot of things, believe it or not, whether we want to or not. And so back to this, you know, what's the comparison with Colin Kaepernick? You know, you got people saying, look how they're out there protesting, and yet Colin Kaepernick was protesting, and yet he can't find a job. Let's talk about Colin Kaepernick. I follow football, NFL. And I remember when Colin Kaepernick, when he was on the 49ers and he took his team to the Super Bowl. The thing with Colin Kaepernick is that as soon as they got rid of their coach, John Harbaugh, he's never been the same. Never. He alienated himself from the locker room, from the media. Every time you saw him, he had on these big headphones, had a, baseball cap on at the interviews, and this is a guy who had the keys to the kingdom. He's their face of their football team, and he seemed very disinterested. And he got to a point where he was so frustrated, he got his money, and he didn't want to play for them no more. He wanted to be traded. I believe this is around the time when they brought in the coach from the Eagles. I forgot his name. What's his name? I can't remember. But he came over from the Eagles, and nobody liked him. Nobody wanted him to be there. It was crazy how he got the opportunity in the first place. But in any event, Colin Kaepernick wanted out, demanded a trade, and they were like, no. He was still under contract. They paid him a ton of money, and they were not going to fulfill his requests. Plus, there wasn't really a huge market for him at the time because he started to decline, whether it was due to injuries or just the league caught up to his style of play. He was a run-first type of quarterback. And so in this league, you got to be able to play in the pocket. That's why you see guys like Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, Drew Brees. I mean, the list goes on. These guys learn to throw in the pocket. And so one of his ways to piss off his organization and embarrass him was to take this knee. And when you look back at it, his words, the main reason for him taking the knee was he was speaking up for police brutality. He wasn't talking about the flag per se. He wasn't talking about the anthem. He was saying that he was disgusted with the discrimination, the police brutality that's been going on in the U.S. And I think around the time, there's a number of cases that went on with police brutality. Sandra Bland. The list goes on. And so when you look at it, the media took this situation and made it bigger than what it is. At this point, I don't think even Colin Kaepernick wants to be Colin Kaepernick, because this is beyond him now. You have a lot of, right-wing liberals, just people who are taking this movement and turning it into their benefit. Black Lives Matter, etc. And when you listen to him, he doesn't speak about anything at all. In fact, he's actually at a point where, his representatives have already come out and said, whatever team he's going to, he's willing to stand. So even he understands now that, this ain't looking good for me. Because here's the situation, and I challenge anybody who's listening. We got to look at this both ways. As an African American myself, I understand what's going on in this country. I understand that we're at the front line and things need to change. But you see, I'm not going to take that stance to my employer. And when you understand the NFL, first of all, the NFL has always been racist, bigotry. I mean, for God's sakes, there's no black owners. It doesn't surprise me that the NFL has a stance, but also this is supposed to be an American pastime. NFL Sundays belong to the NFL. They have a huge following, a patriotic following. For you to take that kind of stance messes up their money. And if you're a business owner and you have an employee that is hurting your bottom line, you get rid of them. I mean, am I lying? Think about your job. Now, I used to work for the bank, and there were a lot of things that I felt like the bank did that wasn't in line with my beliefs and who I am. And this bank was a big bank. And the reputation that they had was that they don't care about minorities and small communities. I couldn't come up to my job with a t-shirt on that says, F the company or F the government, or just something that is just so flagrant. Because what they would look at it as is that, hey, you having this stance, wearing this shirt on our premises is going to have certain customers that may not want to come back to us because of your beliefs, because they would think that we would be in line with your beliefs. And they may be in line with my beliefs. But if it hurts their bottom line, they're not in the business for that. And so as an employer, if an employee is hurting my bottom line, I got to let them go. And there are actually things put in place at the job that sends you that message. I had in my position, it was, don't talk to the media. They control what you have on social media. They wanted to make sure that what you do off the premises doesn't reflect their beliefs. They wanted to keep that separate. And so that's why you see a lot of people protest outside of work. And so if we have that understanding, if you've ever worked at a job, then I could understand where the NFL and the owners are coming from. And they're simply making an example out of him. It's true. He's being blackballed. And so that leads me to a Marshawn Lynch. See, the thing with Marshawn Lynch is he's always been doing this, though. This isn't the first time he sat down during the national anthem. He's someone who decided not to speak to the media because of some interview that he had back in the day, and he didn't like how they twisted his words. And so he's been on a strike from talking to the media, and he's been fined for that. And so it doesn't surprise me that he sits, and I think he sits for his own reason. I don't think it has everything to do with Kaepernick. But even with Marshawn Lynch, when he decided not to speak, I was one of those people that was like, dude, I'm watching you. I'm curious to know, what do you think as a football player? The fans, we pay to watch you. We basically keep money in your pocket. And so you're not even willing to have a conversation to say, this is what I see on defense and this is my mindset. Like, you don't want to talk to the media? I mean, it's your job, man. And people try to get specific. Oh, it's not your job to speak, and it's not your job to stand at the anthem. And listen, again, if you ever had a job There are things that you kind of know that you do, and it's not outlined, but it's a matter of respect, or decency. I mean, it's just common sense. I'll put it to you like that. So if you're an NFL player and you're employed by the NFL and they're very clear that your actions are to protect the shield, and to keep the brand going, if you're doing something that is going to hurt the brand, they're not going to be happy with that. And so again, when I go back and I look at Colin Kaepernick, my thing is, does he truly know what he wants at this point? Because you got a lot of people speaking for him. You don't hear him. I mean, he could have been doing interviews. He could have been rallying outside of the NFL. He could have been using that money he's making from the NFL and turn around and help the people that he's talking about. But I really don't think this is what he wanted. I think this has gotten way bigger than him. I mean, you're hearing him in the same context as Muhammad Ali, and it's just like, whoa. Malcolm X, Black Panthers. Wow. I don't even think that's what he wanted. You got what Ray Lewis, Ray Lewis made comments about him. He's another former NFL player. And he said basically, whoever's in your ear, man, you gotta start speaking up for yourself. Because he believes that people are controlling the things that he's saying at this point. I do too. I think he's being funded by these organizations because, again, they're using him as a martyr. They're using him to forward their own agenda. And again, these are things that if you do your own research, it's there. Just really do your research. And as far as the anthem is concerned, again, this was never really about the anthem at first. But yeah, the anthem, it changed over time. Yes, it had slavery language in there in the third verse. But it changed over time because at the time of the Constitution, it wasn't in our benefit as African Americans. But, there are people who, I have family that are in the Army that represented this country. And at the end of the day, some people stand up in representation of them, those people who gave up their lives for the very beliefs, for the very laws that empower you to be able to say what you want to say and be what you want to be. Again, does that eliminate racism? No. And to be honest, marching to me isn't going to erase that either. Protesting ain't going to erase that either. We got to get back to the point of where there's a culture. When you look at other, nationalities, they have culture. Jews have culture. Asians have culture. Chinese. We got to get back to having a culture as African Americans. And so that's not going to change by just getting down on one knee. It's just not. You can't, anytime you want a change and it is known that you want to change, it is not happening, you cannot beg for a change. Unfortunately, it takes a lot. Okay? You got to force change. You just have to. And I'm not saying, everybody runs around, be violent or anything like that. I'm saying that you got to know how to play the game. You got to win from the inside out. You got to understand the money system. Create your own businesses. Again, I said this before. Have your own police. Have your own hospitals. Your own schools. These are things that we could have because we're making more money than we ever made before. It's what we're doing with it that keeps us behind. And so if I'm a Colin Kaepernick and I want change, be vocal about it and start giving people solutions. But just it's getting on a knee ain't changing nothing. Not changing nothing. Period. And I know people gonna get mad about it, but I'm just being honest with you. At some point, you gotta understand what is really going on out there. Because we're losing. We're losing because we're the only ones that look towards athletes and entertainers to represent us. I mean, I'm looking at my Instagram, man, and I'm seeing some of these entertainers, and I'm just like, give it a rest, man. Like, at some point, we can't keep talking about it. It's about actions. And the last thing I'm saying is that don't expect things to change because you ask for change. Doesn't work like that. Doesn't work like it. So we got to smarten up. And so, like I said, the situation going on in Virginia, it happens. It happens in a lot of other places. And so we got to really be careful with the media. Because the media is going to take it and they use a lot of distractions. People are talking about where they got the teepees from and how they got it from Home Depot and it's not really real tikis and just, oh man, the society, man, is just wow. Athletes, let them be athletes. And as far as protesting the NFL, for what? What are you protesting the NFL for? NFL is not in control of the police and the government and all of that, although they probably are. I mean, the NFL they're big. They can get things done. But they're a business. They're a for-profit business, not non-profit. And the way they look at it is they employ people and they pay them a lot of money. So if you're an athlete, the way they look at it is, hey, we pay you to show up on Sunday, Thursday, or Monday night and basically run into each other. That's basically what they look at, how they look at it. Whatever else you decide to do away from here in terms of protests, that's on you. Now, if you do something that's embarrasses them, that's when they got to get involved. That's why you see domestic violence. Because listen, domestic violence has been going on for the longest in the NFL. There's been many of athletes that have been caught up with that. But it's just ever since the Ray Rice situation, the league has been really under a microscope. And at this point, they're going to do everything to protect themselves. That's just the way it is. That's how it is in business. And so when you look at these athletes, like Ezekiel Elliott, who was just recently suspended for 6 games. Shout out to all my Cowboys fans out there. They know who they are. But, he has to understand that as an athlete, when you have millions of dollars, you got to be very careful, especially when you're under a microscope. And if you don't know how to carry yourself without money, you're going to be a bigger fool even with money. And the way you could tell that this guy, Ezekiel Elliott, had issues was the fact that when he got signed by the Dallas Cowboys, his parents had to move to be close to him to keep an eye on him. This is what his father said. And nobody knows their children more than their parents. Okay? They even knew he's somebody who's going to get in trouble. And this guy's only been here 1 year. And he's already had several cases. So he got to get it together. Period. But that's, again, it goes back to the media. The fact that the media was all over the NFL during the Ray Rice situation, saying that they were not hard on him. They got to try to get it right. And so they rather go over the top to send you a message than let you get away with things 1, 2, 3 times and then base their decision on the reactions of, the media or just the general public. They can't work backwards like that anymore. General public gets upset. Okay, got to come back and give him a harder sentence. They don't want to do that. And as far as, he wasn't guilty, he didn't do anything. Listen, these guys pay off people left and right. And when you get caught in a situation more than once, come on. At least one of those situations is true. And the way they looking at it is that if we allow you to keep going, you're going to get in a situation that you can't pay off. And so he got to do better. Okay. So that's my take on him. But do I think people are going to really boycott the NFL? No. NFL's too big. It's too big. And the thing about the NFL is, even if players decide to go on strike, there's millions of other people willing to play that they could find. Put a helmet on them, and things will go just as normal. Because the athletes are not really that big. There's very few athletes, football players that really stand out, that could walk down the street and people know who they are. Odell Beckham Jr. is one of those people. Tom Brady's one of those people. Aaron Rodgers, because again, you see him on TV, on commercials. But a lot of these other football players, please, they could walk down the street, especially if you outside of your home team. They're not gonna know who you are. If you are defensive lineman or cornerback, you're not gonna get that attention. That's the thing with the difference between football and basketball. Basketball, they're not wearing helmets, so you can identify players. That's why, the NFL, not the NFL, I'm sorry, the NBA, I feel like those athletes are able to make way more money because they have more exposure, and they can be marketed a lot better because you see who they are. Now, it doesn't mean that they can just do crazy things. But, when I think about it, compared to the NFL, man, those guys in the NBA is like angels. Part of it is because, in my opinion, is the fact that people can identify who they are. Listen, a guy comes in who's 6'9", 6'10", kind of figure, they play basketball. Football, those guys are big, heavy set. Again, if you're not a wide receiver that's well known or QB, and even these QBs, they're not big, muscular guys, so that they could get lost in the crowd. And so, obviously, football players take a lot of risk, and they should be compensated. But they're not gonna be boycotting nothing. They need their money. Them football players, those athletes, man, very few of them make money off the field. So if you really tell them to lose a check by sitting down, they ain't gonna do it. Now these baseball players, forget it. These basketball players, James Harden just signed a deal for over $200 million. And they got guaranteed money. You cut them, you let them go, they still getting paid. And they could still do, and that's not even including what they do outside the basketball court. Steph Curry just signed a deal for over $200 million. These guys are getting paid. But the NBA is definitely more lenient when it comes to speaking out than the NFL. I think a lot of it has to do with, you know, again, it's creeping up to the football when it comes to a global sport. You know, they're really making an effort to go out to other countries. I don't think the NFL makes that kind of effort. I know they have these London games, but it's just like the NFL is very cocky. You know, when you have high ratings, you know, you feel like, and you on top of the world, you feel like you don't need to do much. You feel like the competition got to catch up to you. But the minute you stop innovating, that's when it's game over. That's when people catch up to you. So they definitely need to be careful because the NBA is coming. You know, the more exposure that they have, all these international players coming in the league. Soon you're going to have countries that are going to be backing up teams because of certain players. They better be careful. But I know I kind of drifted off a little bit into that, but those are some things that I just had on my mind and I just wanted to talk about. But yeah, back to Kaepernick. I think he got to speak up for himself. Stop letting the media and other people talk for him and try to defend him. You have a platform. This is your opportunity to speak. Say what it is that you want to see happen. And if you about football, be about football too. You know, let's see you throwing that football, you know, practicing, working out. Because at the end of the day, if you're not worth the risk to any of these owners, they're not gonna take that risk. And can you blame them? No. Because when you put him on par with some of these backups, right? The difference is that, yeah, he's maybe better than a lot of these backups in the league. But again, with the following and the negativity that comes with him, it's not worth it. It could cause confusion in the locker room. You think everybody in the locker room agrees with what he's doing? Trust me, it's not. That's not the case. And then he has to be in the right system to match his skill set as well. And what I think teams don't want to do is you don't want to bring on Kaepernick and not play him. Kind of like what they did with Tebow. You know, guys, you know, I think the Patriots picked him up, never played him. You don't want to just take him and then not do anything with him. You know, so it's a tough situation, but I don't think he helps his situation. His girlfriend has been very vocal for him, calling owners racist. I think she called the Baltimore Ravens owner racist, and he was willing to consider bringing on Kaepernick. But you know, once that happened, forget it. He's like, I'm good. So she's definitely not helping him. He has to figure out what does he want to be and what does he want to do. Because you can still protest, you can still do a lot of good, and still play football. Or not. I mean, again, he doesn't need the NFL in order to further his message. He could do that on his own. But if you want to use the NFL, unfortunately, you got to play by the NFL's rules. It's just like, you know, I want to open up my own business. I don't have the money. I can't get a loan. So I get a job on the side in order to use that money to put towards my business. So you make a sacrifice. The same thing with him. You know, if you need money, if what you're doing on the side isn't sustaining you, then you got to bite the bullet, work the job, and use those resources in order to further your other endeavors. That's usually how you do it. You know, but, you know, I'm speaking to the listeners here, man. Regardless of what you believe, just do your research and don't let the media and Instagram and Twitter and even me. Don't just take it and run with it. Do your research. Understand what's really going on. And that's why I talk about the narrative and I talk about the actual news. There's always going to be a narrative at play here, some sort of a distraction. You got to be able to see through that, make your own decisions, and don't just run along with everything that you hear. All right. So, man, that's the podcast for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I should be up on SoundCloud and iTunes starting this week. So I will definitely announce that on my Twitter, which is Built for Anything. Built, the number 4, anything. This podcast will go up on my YouTube, which is also Built for Anything. And I appreciate you for listening. And I catch you on the next episode. Peace and love, y'all.